design derivatives. He has more than 30 years of experience in design thinking. What I think that Ninad very correctly says that design thinking is not just for designers, it's a creative mindset that should be used by everybody. So thank you, Ninad, for being here with us. Sanjana, you're going next.
Hi, good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce Rashi Nigam. Rashi is currently working as an implementation co-lead for the MIT Playful Journey Lab in Bangalore. An engineer by education, she has varied experience from mentoring students to working with technology to solve problems. She reads voraciously and wishes to create an informed, aware, and ethical world around her. We are lucky to have her on board with us as she takes us through the design thinking workshop.
Thank you so much. Pleasure being here.
Good morning. So the next one is Saloni Mohapatra. So she is an industrial engineering and operations research student at UC Berkeley, and she's extremely passionate about data science and mathematics. And while she was unable to get exposure to coding at an early age, she realized that this is her passion. And she's also designed, piloted, and implemented a practical science curriculum at several underfunded schools across India. And she believes that it is essential for students to get a good foundation in STEM subjects, which are science, technology, engineering, and mathematics at an early age. Saloni is also a teacher with us at Coding and More.
Thanks for introducing me, Sanjana.
Hi everyone, my name is Shikha and I'm delighted to welcome Tina Bali Rudra as our design thinking mentor. She's an architect. She is the founder of R&B Associates that she founded in 2006. She's a design juror at many design schools. She's the mother of a young daughter and an educator at heart. She also founded the Red Trunk Project that aims to bring design and structured thinking into the curious young minds of our children. And so design thinking inspires one to ask questions and to probe deeper into the problem and possible solutions at hand. So let's not wait any longer and let's deep dive into our design thinking workshops with our 4 amazing mentors. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. So guys, I've created 3 breakout rooms. So I will be assigning, I've already assigned the teams and the mentors to the breakout room. I will just be opening all of them. So there might just be a 1-2 minute lag. I think once all the participants are there, then y'all can start.
Sure.
Thank you. Also, guys, the ones who have just joined, make sure your team number is in front of your name so I can assign you to the breakout rooms. So 1, 9, and 7 are going to be in the main session with Tina. Yeah, okay. Kush Bhagat, can I please know your team number? You can just unmute or add it and rename. 7, okay, thank you. Yeah, I think we're good to go. Shall we? Yeah, perfect. Okay. Yeah, Tina, you can start.
Sure. Am I audible? Shikha, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Oh, great. Thank you very much, Shikha, for this very kind and a generous introduction. And thank you, Supriya, for inviting me to meet these wonderful, young, enthusiastic friends that I can see on the screen in front of me right now. I would like to share something. I've always been a very big fan of Kevin and Hobbes because I've always felt that they end up saying the most important, the most profound, and the most commonsensical stuff in the simplest of the manner. And honestly, as of today, I envy the kids who get more time to read the Kevin and Hobbes than I do. So allow me to just share my screen.
You should be able to share your screen.
Yeah. Yes, that's good. Is it visible to everybody?
Yeah.
I'll you all to read this. It's a nice one. I personally think it's a very interesting perception of change, right? Nothing, or in fact, not as often is change very sudden, or not often does change happen overnight. It's very gradual, and most of the times, in fact, always, this change takes place up here in our minds. Our minds, which is actually a very powerful tool, which actually empowers us to become change makers in our own very rights. And we, the change makers, cumulatively bring about the change, and soon everything in this world is different. So I thought this was a very nice note to begin this session with. Okay. So what is design thinking? Is it some magic? Is it some rocket science? Is it something that is extraterrestrial? No, it isn't. Because I personally feel that each and every one of us understands this act of design thinking. And each and every one of us, at some stage, hopefully, has empathized with others, has practiced this structured way of thinking that design thinking is. So over the last few decades, the work that the D School at Stanford, they've done a lot of work at design thinking, and you all must go and have a look at their website. There's a lot of resources out there, which is really useful. So a lot of work that the Stanford D School has done, a lot of work that the various design thinkers and mentors across the world have done, have basically structured it and brought it into the conscious realm from the subconscious realm, from where we may have practiced it at some point in our life. Yeah. What you're seeing on your screen is, of course, the very famous model that the Stanford D School has structured. And I think I'm aware that you guys were shown this model sometime last evening. Yeah, thumbs up if you guys have seen it ever earlier. Right, a few of you have. Thanks for the response. Before we jump into this diagram, I'd just like to elaborate a bit more on how design thinking is an important tool for us all to be familiar with. So design thinking to me is a very methodical way of thinking creatively, right? It's a framework that helps you solve complex problems of the real world. And what makes these solutions very unique and what empowers us is the confidence that one experiences or one feels or one gains once one is able to tackle these complex design challenges. But what is very unique about these solutions is the fact that these solutions are human-centered. They are user-centered. It's never about, I think we should do this and get the world rid of this problem. Or I feel that this is the best solution for this problem. Or I know that this is the best way to deal with this problem. That's not what it is. What's important to understand is the fact that every problem has to be understood by getting into the shoes of the user who is going to be using the product, who's going to be accessing the product, who's going to be tackling the situation or the problem on ground, or who's be facing or dealing with that opportunity on ground. And some of the key values that design thinking relies on is, of course, empathy, like we just said, collaboration, because design thinking never happens in isolation. It's often a group of people, diverse people with diverse skill sets, with diverse temperaments who come together, who bring in experience from their different realms, and then collectively have a conversation, have discussion, collaborate, and work towards solutions. And there's another very interesting value that design thinking reinforces, and that is something that each one of you has, much more than maybe I have, because I'm probably 3 times your age or 4 times your age. Can you guess what that is? Can anyone guess what that is?
Guys, you all can unmute and answer if you all want.
Maybe 40.
So sweet. Well, try not guessing my age on a public platform. That'll be embarrassing for me. But try guessing what is another value that you guys have much more than me and the adults may have. Is there some value that you think? You definitely have so many more things in you than we do. You're smarter for one, yes. But there's something else which is definitely much more that you guys have than most of us.
Creativity.
Sorry?
Creativity.
Definitely. Definitely. Anything else?
Miss, brain age.
Brain age.
Yeah, like our brain age is younger.
Definitely. 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 I like that. I really like that. Your brain is younger. Your brain is not very conditioned. Your brain is not very limited by certain conditioning and the constraints that arise out of conditioning. Yeah, so that's lovely. Yeah. Anybody else? So if I were to take that idea forward, you're not very conditioned. You have a very fresh take. You look at things through a very different lens than we do. And most importantly, I personally think that all of you are absolutely fearless. You guys will think of an idea and you'll go ahead and work on that idea. You guys will think of an idea without fearing, oh my God, what happens if it doesn't work? I'll still go ahead and invest myself into that idea. And that fearlessness, that lack of fear of failure is what makes this the perfect time for you guys to start practicing this structured way of thinking. Because what design thinking pushes you to do is to ideate, to prototype, to test your ideas. And it's all right if you fail. It's all right if the idea doesn't work. Because every failure inspires innovation. Because every idea, whether it works or it doesn't work, the idea sows the seeds for innovation, for something bigger, for the next idea to get refined, for the next idea to come better. So I'm hoping that through this workshop, you're going to really show me how fearless you all are. Is that a thumbs up? Super, super. So yes, coming back to this graphic, which is there on the screen in front of us. So this is the very famous and the most shared graphic or the diagram that the Stanford G School has shared with the world, and which simply puts together the various stages of design thinking. And like it says on the screen, it's empathize, it's define, to ideate, to prototype, and to test. Now, can anyone try telling me what do they understand of the word empathize? Anybody? Fearlessly. Empathize is to be able to understand the other. Empathize is the ability to be able to get into someone else's shoes and understand how the other person feels, what are the challenges that the other person is going through, and to really get a deep insight into the other. Yeah? And how can that happen? That can often happen by talking to that person, by spending time with that person, like the diagram says, by interviewing that person, right? And the most important rule of this first step of empathizing is not judge the other. You may be very good at swimming and you may be actually one of the most proficient swimmer, but the other you are talking about may have certain challenges while swimming. So when you're sitting down and trying to understand what are the challenges that the other person feels while swimming or experiences, the idea is not to say, oh, but that's so easy. No, the idea is to listen. So one of the skills that empathizing really requires you to consciously use is your listening skill and your ability to connect with the other, right? Once you've understood the person, it's very important for you to identify what is the problem or what is the nature of the challenge in a particular scenario that the person is going through. And that's when you define your problem. And once you've understood the person well, and once you've defined your problem well, the sky is your limit, because then you can have n number of ideas to solve that problem. Yeah, and that is the ideating stage. And once you've ideated it, you've critiqued your ideas, you've thrashed your ideas as a group, individually, you decide and you prioritize and you decide which are the strong ideas, which are the ideas that you'd like to take further. And that's when you prototype it. That's when you make these mock-ups of your ideas. And these mock-ups can be communicated. These prototypes can be communicated in some of the most interesting and creative ways. And then these prototypes go through testing. Now, how will you test? Will you test it on yourself? Because you started this whole process of thinking and design by trying to understand the other. So do you think it's a good idea to test it on the other? To test it on the person who informed you about the challenge and the problem? Do you think that's a good idea? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Or should you be testing it on yourself?
Guys, you all can unmute and answer as well. Or
So
send
when you guys are designing these apps, right? Are you going to be testing it yourself, or would you like to test it on the people who will actually be using these products that you're designing?
I think you should test it with the people who are using it, because it should be comfortable to them than us, because we all have different ways of going about life, and we might be comfortable with something and then they might not be. So I think it's best to give it to the audience and see their reaction to it.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Thank you so much for that response. Shikha, I don't think these guys need any special workshop sessions. I think they're brilliant where they already are. So thank you so much for that fantastic response. Yes, you take it back to the user like you said, the users are the ones who will be using that product. They may have their own set of limitations, their own set of potentials, and that product has to be optimizing on their skill sets, on their potentials, on their limitations. So yes, that's a very fantastic response. There's one thing I'd like to say here, and that is that however linear this process appears to be right now on your screen, this design thinking process is in real not as linear as it may appear to you right now. It can be pretty cyclic, and it can also be very lateral. When I say it is not linear, is because often you may start with understanding your user. You may end up defining a problem. But when you start ideating and when you start opening your mind to lots of ideas and solutions, sometimes solutions can also inform the problem a little more. And that can actually give you a better understanding of your user. So you may actually be going back, adding value to your understanding of the user and the problem at the ideation stage. Often when you are testing your prototype, again with the users, you may actually come back with feedbacks which throw so much more light in certain other realms or certain other departments that you never thought of initially. So the feedbacks that you get on the testing stage from your user may again give you more information on the user, give you a better understanding on the user. And then that understanding may again end up refining and adding more detail to your problem definition. So it's not as linear as it's appearing, and it's healthy and it's important for you to keep doing to and fro between these different stages of design thinking. Yeah?
Anjali had a question. Anjali, you can go ahead.
Sure.
In the case of which you said, the user is always right?
No, Anjali.
You want to build something in design thinking, you need to do what all the users want.
Yes, but you also have to have the skill to interpret the wants and the needs of the user at a much deeper level. So I may want, let's say, I'll give you an example. That's a very interesting and a very good question. So I'll take a little time because I wanted to discuss this a little later, but probably this is a good time to do it. So for instance, a few months ago, my right hand fingers, there were few days in the week when I'd wake up with very stiff and painful fingers, right? And a couple of times I ended up popping in some pills to just get started with my day. After a few weeks of doing this, I got a little worried, right? And I said, oh my God, why are these paining so frequently? Why are they so stiff so frequently? And then I decided to probe into that problem a little more. So my want was to get relieved of the pain and stiffness in my fingers. So I said, let me just figure out what did I do yesterday. And then I realized that there is a pattern. And the pattern is that every time so I love writing, and I'm a little old school and I like to write on the paper. So I realized that every time I was writing with my fountain pen, I would write for a few hours continuously, right? And the next day, every time my fingers would get stiff. All right, that's a revelation I realized. Then I asked myself another question. So what is it about writing? Because it disappointed me because I need to write. So my next question was, what is it about writing that hurts my fingers? And I realized that the pen, the fountain pen with which I was writing, was a metallic and a very smooth finish. And my fingers would slip. And I needed to grip it a lot tighter and hold it a lot tighter to be able to write for long. All right. So there I've identified another problem. And the problem is that there is not enough friction between the pen and my fingers. Right? So then I asked myself another question. And I said, oh my God, Tina, why don't you just take another pen which has a better grip and start writing with that, you just solve your problem. Now that's where I got a very interesting conflict that existed in my head. And the conflict was that while that pen was slippery, while that pen required me to hold it very tightly and write, it was the pen that my mom had gifted to me on a very special occasion. And it's a pen that's very dear to my heart, and I want to use it for the longest possible time. Now, that was a very interesting conflict that I realized becomes an opportunity for me to think creatively, to become innovative and figure out a solution, to not have aching fingers, and at the same time continue using the pen that is so dear to me, which has a huge emotional value for me. Now, once I've zoomed into the user problem, so I was myself the user here, right, Anjali? I am the user here. So if the first few days when my want simply was, oh, I'm in pain, I need to get rid of the pain. So the solution was popping in a pill. But the minute I started probing deeper into that problem of the user, I reached this somewhere deep inside, layer by layer, I unveiled a very interesting conflict. And that conflict became so specific that it gave me an immense opportunity to think creatively now. I can't continue with the pain. I can't let go of that pen. So what do? I could design some interesting padding for my 3 fingers as a product. So every time I write with the pen, the friction is there, the padding is there, and the problem is solved. Or I may just add another layer of cushioning to a certain area, the front part of the pen, and start getting a better grip and write easily. So what I'm trying to say here is that once I've zoomed into, once I've become specific about the problem and the conflict, the solutions, the ideation can be multiple. So to come back to your question, Anjali, the user's want or need always has to be respected. But as somebody who understands the process of design thinking, what you really need and what we will hopefully explore through this workshop is the ability to get a deep insight, to layer by layer unveil the core problem that exists, which needs solution for the first layer of problem to get solved. Does that answer your question, Anjali?
Yes, that does.
Thank you. Any other question? All right, so let's move ahead. Now I have to share a little secret with you guys, and I'll be honest with you. Often when these workshops are done with a slightly higher age group, and trust me, it doesn't very often happen with kids because like I said, I love the fearlessness and the confidence with which the kids come to the workshop. But I feel that every time the word creatively thinking is used, I see a bit of a frown appear on the faces of slightly elder than you audience. And then I realized that I think there may be a bit of a lack of clarity in understanding this term creative, right? So now, fortunately, there are so many of us around, there's so many people around us who are gifted with artistic abilities, right? Unfortunately, there's an equal number of people who aren't gifted with artistic abilities. I am one of them. But that does not stop me from being creative. And I'm sure that each and every one of you who's right now going through this session with me, I just got muted. Did you miss anything, Shikha? I just got a message that I've been muted.
Sorry. I don't know if I did that by mistake. I'm so sorry.
Okay, but did you miss anything? Do I need to go back a little?
No, you just stop speaking for like 1 second.
Oh, super. So, like I was saying, that I'm sure each and every person who's in this session with us on whichever platform it may be, I think all of us are very creative. We may not have artistic abilities, but that in no way hinders our creativity and our skill to engage with problems and challenges creatively. So to this effect, I want to do the small little task with all of you. Are you guys ready? Are you guys ready? Thumbs up. Do you have a paper and a pencil, or just any rough sheet of paper and a pencil next to you? Okay, then you'll have to close your eyes and visualize. All right. For those who don't have a paper or a pencil with them, please close your eyes and visualize. And for those who have a paper pencil with them, please sketch it. Is that fair? Yeah. What I'm going to ask you to do now, I'm going to say a few words, right? And as I say a few words, I would want you to quickly, in 10 seconds, sketch the first thing that comes to your mind listening to that word, or with your eyes closed, visualize it, right? So should we get started? Thumbs up. Are we all ready? Super.
Yes.
Super. My first word is baby. 10 seconds. The second word, house. And the third word, idea. So how many of you, we'll be honest here, how many of you drew a guy with a bulb outside, or a girl with a bulb shining, a lit bulb shining outside his or her head?
Miss, I didn't draw a person, I just drew a light bulb.
Ah, nice. Close.
I
How
thought
many of you drew? Yeah.
I thought of a person with a light bulb above his head.
Fantastic. How many of you drew a pitched roof or a sloping roof house with the chimney sticking out?
I did.
Fantastic.
I did.
And how many of you, what was our first word? Baby. And how many of you made this little face with a single curly, twirly hair in the middle? Ah, so sweet. Some of you did. Now, how many of us have seen a baby like that? A baby with a single curl? Or how often do we see a house, pitched roof house with a chimney? Or how often do we see a bulb light the minute there is an idea? We don't see that too often, right? Yet, when we have to communicate these ideas, these are the first graphics that come to your mind. And that's creative. You've communicated an idea quickly in 10 seconds to any onlooker or any audience who wants to really understand what's happening in your mind. And that is the key skill that we require for this workshop today. So it's all right, because I can't draw a beautiful house. I shouldn't say that because I'm an architect, but I can't sketch it. I can design it. I can draw it on paper. I can use software, but I'm not an artist. I don't have the ability to artistically represent or make an impression of a house. I can't draw a baby, right? The way a baby really looks every time. I can't really figure out how to draw a person with an idea in his head, right? But if I can communicate these things graphically and very quickly, that's all that's required of us. Now, I I'm going to share something with you guys. I am going to share the key objectives of this workshop. For those who are in this room, or for those of you who are viewing this workshop on any other platform from any other part in the world, I want you to understand that this workshop is going to attempt to be very demonstrative of the process of design thinking, right? It's going to attempt at revealing or demonstrating how one can probe deeper into a challenge and a problem, how one can probe and understand one's user better, and understand understand why is the need for that problem to be solved by that user. And that should lead to really innovative, really out of the box, and really interesting ideas for you to develop eventually in this hackathon. Does that sound good to you guys? Yeah?
Yes.
So like the slide says, the questions that one would want to ask today repeatedly, deliberately, and I may even annoy you by probing you and nudging you at times, on asking what, on asking who, and I will ask you why. Rather, you will ask yourself very often what, who, and why. And it is only when you have answers to these questions that you will be equipped with a very interesting and deep, and that should lead to fantastic ideas and products that you're going to present to the world. So are you ready? Are we all ready? Thumbs up. Super. All right, now I wanted to share this very quick case example with all of you. Many design thinking workshops use this as a case example and as a very interesting story for explaining the power or the significance of this tool, right? Now, like the slide says, these are OXO good grip peelers. And these are, trust me, one of the most widely used vegetable peelers and kitchen equipments and tools across the world, okay? And this is a little story, so sit back, relax, and just listen to this little story. I may not be a great storyteller, but I'll hopefully be able to elaborate or highlight the key facts here. Now, this peeler is a very important event in the history of industrial design, right? And this is a story of somewhere around 1990s. And it's also one of the best examples of a very user-centered design, which led to innovation and which responded actually to an extreme user, but then got so widely accepted by the rest of the bulk users, right? And so the story goes that this gentleman by the name of Sam Faber, pardon me for my pronunciation if I'm incorrect, he was on a holiday with his wife, and they spent a month away in summers, having a lovely holiday, lovely break, cooking, cleaning. Pretty much sounds like the lockdown here, doesn't it? But they had a lovely holiday, cooking and cleaning. His wife suffered from arthritis. And it so happens that she develops this terrible pain one evening in her hands and fingers, and she blames it all on the peeler. And he finds her in a lot of pain, and on probing a little further, it gets revealed that the pain is because of the peeler and her arthritis condition. Because of her arthritis condition, the grip on the peeler does not help her. It just amplifies the pain. It just exaggerates the pain. And then she tells him that I want you to redesign, I want you to do something about the grip. And he was already into manufacturing of kitchen equipment and utensils. So he starts sketching and he starts ideating, and he makes a prototype, and he brings it back to her. And she holds the handle, she finds it better, but she gives the feedback to him. And then he goes back, he ideates much further, makes iterations of the same on the basis of her feedback, and comes back with another iteration to her. And this time it's a lot more comfortable. It's a lot more easier for her extreme condition of arthritis. And there's a lot more comfort in using that product. And then he realizes that this is a good product, and why not just send it out in the market and trust and try it and test it. And it so happens that in no time, this product takes over the rest of the products in the market. So in the context of design thinking, this case example throws a very important, highlights a very important concept or a phenomena. And that is that whenever you're designing a product, whenever you're designing anything, be it an app, be it a dish, be it a costume, be it a building, be it a product, if you were to design for something called an extreme user, right? The product makes place even in the realm of the bulk users. So in this case, the extreme user was this lady with an arthritis issue. And this product had been tweaked and innovated and modified to suit her need. But when it goes out to the market, who does not like a lot more comfortable experience of peeling vegetables, right? Who doesn't want the experience to get better or the product to get better? And hence the product found a place even in the lives of the bulk user. So the extreme user may be a very small percentage, but the extreme user often has very amplified needs, has very exaggerated needs. And probing into that need of that extreme user often throws a very, very interesting, what should I say? It reveals a very interesting insight into a problem. It reveals very interesting conflicts. And tackling those insights, tackling those conflicts leads to what you're seeing on your screen, innovative products, innovative solutions. Yeah? So we may just keep coming back to this case example in the course of the workshop, and that will make it easy for us to converse in this virtual platform, in this virtual landscape that we are in. So what I would like you all to do as your second task for the day is, I'm told that all of you are familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals. Am I right? A few responses here will be really helpful. And I'm told that you guys have been thoroughly engaging yourself with these Sustainable Development Goals, and you found inclination towards a few of them, and you're wanting to address issues related to some of these goals through your product. Yeah, thumbs up for I've got this correctly, if I've understood the situation properly. All right, great. So what I want you to do now in your groups is to spend the next 2 minutes trying to get very specific about the problem or the challenge that you are wanting to address. Do you understand what I'm asking you to do right now? So for instance, in the case of the OXO grip, the lady had a lot of pain in her hands, right? That the problem was the pain. Now, are you trying to solve the pain in the hands by just suggesting a balm or a medicine, or is there a problem within a problem? The problem within the problem in that case was that the grip of the peeler is not good enough for a person with arthritis condition. And that became the specific problem that was addressed through that product. So in the case example that I gave you for myself, where my fingers became stiff writing pen, I wrote specific problem was there was not enough friction between the pen and the fingers. Yeah. So within the larger domain, what are the specific problems that you're wanting to address is what I want you to list very quickly in the next 5 minutes. Any questions? I can't really see the questions, so I'll really rely on you to inform me if there are questions here.
You can also just, do you see the little chat icon? Actually, no, you're sharing.
No, I don't.
Yeah, sorry. No, I will just call them. Guys, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat or unmute yourselves and ask them loudly as well. So y'all can use the Google slides that I sent you yesterday. Each slide has a name. So where you see your name, you can just type it out there. All the problems that you're trying to face in your chosen SDG that you're trying to achieve.
So let's say, let's prioritize those problems through this exercise also, right? So I want a minimum of 1 problem and a maximum of 3 listed there. Even if you want to write 5 or 6, I want you to list them in in a sequence of priority. Which do you think is the most important, then the next important, then the next, and so on. Yeah. So let's say your time starts now. So you've got 5 minutes to do this.
Guys, I don't see everyone typing on the slide. If you guys need me to resend y'all the link, please tell me and I'll do it. Y'all can just send it on chat.
Miss, do we mention the SDG goal so it's clearer according to the question?
That'll be much clearer. Yes, please. Team 1, does everyone have the link?
Ma'am, it wasn't opening for me. That's why I wasn't typing.
Which team is this?
Team 9, ma'am.
Okay, just a second. I'll just resend it to you. What's your name, please?
Anjali.
Sure. Please try opening it again. I've sent it to you on the Zoom chat.
Okay, now I can open.
Great. Team 1, everyone's able to open it? Aisha, Ariana, Ahana. I'll just resend you guys the link on the Zoom chat.
I can see some very interesting responses coming in.
What do we have to do on this slide?
So what you need to do on this slide is first state the SDG goal, that the Sustainable Development Goal that you're wanting to work with, and start trying to become very specific about what exactly is the problem within the goal, right? So you may ask, so for instance, ask a question, what exactly am I trying to tackle within this?
Miss, you were cracking, so can you please repeat what you said?
Sure. Is this a little better now?
Yeah.
So what I would want you to do is, it'll be nice if you can identify and state the sustainable development goal that you would want to work with, and then become a lot more specific about what is the specific problem within the goal that you're wanting to address. Now, that problem may not be written in just one question. You may start with, I would want to address this particular problem. Then you may ask another question, what I want to tackle. So you may get another level of problem. Then what about that? Why does that happen? So you may actually, like this, try probing a little deeper. Keep asking why that problem keeps occurring. Why is that a problem? Why is that? So every answer, you may ask a question to that, right? And see if you can get me a very specific problem within the Sustainable Development Goal. You may not really want to mention the solution here right now. It's all right. But let's look for a very specific problem that really troubles you within that Sustainable Development Goal. I'll give you 1 minute extra, since this was the first task and we were getting comfortable with the Google Slides. Are we ready, everybody? Are we ready to start sharing whatever we've identified?
So should I share the screen of team 1?
That'll be nice, yes.
Guys, which team is ready? Who should I start with?
Yeah, team 1 is ready, it seems.
Okay. Yeah. So we have Ahana's slide here. Ahana, you want to go ahead?
Ahana, it's a very, very noble intent and a very interesting and a very sensible way of reading into this particular goal. And that's fantastic. What I want you to do, Ahana, is to answer a couple of questions, right? So I can see that you've identified global warming as your key concern domain. Am I right?
Ahana, please unmute.
Yes, miss.
Okay. And I also can see that there are two examples that you've cited here. You've cited sea levels rising and you've cited Amazon rainforest, right?
Yes, the
Both are
fire.
very significant and both are very alarming, right? Now, which of these, how would you prioritize? So whenever you are going to go further into this question, you would have to actually probe independently into them maybe, and then see if there are any overlapping conditions. So for instance, you may want to ask, why are the sea levels rising? What is the problem with the sea levels rising? Do you want to answer that?
Like the sea levels are rising because we use if we the batteries which like all the gadgets and ACs and factories it that causes global warming, and global warming that makes the sea levels rise.
Awesome. So let's rephrase this whole thing now. Let's say that there is global warming, and Ahana asked herself, why is the global warming happening? Why the temperature is rising? And then Ahana answers for herself and says, hey, like she just did a while ago, and she says, hey, you know what? The pollution and the factories and the gases that are given out by the factories, the aerosols, the heat that is generated because of these gases that are sent out into the atmosphere. They're actually causing maybe something in the atmosphere because of which the temperatures are increasing. Right, Ahana? Then Ahana will ask herself another question. I'm trying not to put words in your mouth, hence I'm leaving some gaps. Then Ahana will want to say, oh, but why are they giving out these gases out to the atmosphere? Why are they not taking care of them? Why is this happening? Why are we letting so many fumes out through our cars, through our houses, through our chimneys, through the factories? And then Ahana will realize, oh, because these cannot be contained inside buildings and they have to be released out. So then Ahana has realized, and then what is happening because of the temperature rising, the ice in the Antarctica and the Arctic Circle, that's all melting, right? And that is where the sea levels are rising. So now Ahana needs to understand that the problem of sea levels rising is happening because at a daily level, there is a problem of temperatures increasing day by day because of certain activities in the developed world. Now, your problem, Ahana, should be to become very specific onto some of those activities that are causing the sea levels to rise. Are you understanding what I'm saying?
Yes, Ahana? Can you unmute? She's on mute.
So there are two things. Either you will look Either you will look and probe for the cause. What is that specific set of activities, right? That whole act of releasing fumes into the atmosphere. If that is the problem area, if that's the key area, all right, then let's start designing a product that addresses that, right? Another way to look at it would be, all right, now the sea levels are rising and there are certain parts of the world which are in trouble because there are certain islands which are sinking, and in a few years they'll disappear. So maybe your product wants to be able to address this problem, the sinking islands, or so you have to become very, very, very specific about the problem within this phenomena. And that will make it very easy for you to justify your product, to bring the product into the market. But even before that, that'll be very helpful for you to be able to design that product, to make it the most relevant product or the most relevant idea within the context of global warming. Yeah?
Yes, Ahana? She's our youngest member here.
I know, and it's so impressive. That's why I'm so impressed with the intent. It's so amazing. I mean, it's something that all of us should actually learn from Ahana. Thanks, Ahana.
Thank you, Ahana.
All right. This is Ariana within the same group, right? So if I understand correctly, all of you are wanting to address the climate change.
Right. So let's move on to team 7.
Yes.
Okay, wow. So Simone, yeah, from team 7.
Team 7. I read this while they were writing and I thought this was very interesting. Simone, again, this is a very interesting, very, very interesting thought, and it's a very relevant thought. The fact that you're looking now, the only thing I'll ask you to do here is step back a little, okay? Now, let me just myself step back from the slides right now and let everyone know that through this workshop, I understand that I'm addressing an audience of varying types within this group also, right? Some of you probably haven't zoomed into the problem and probably haven't identified the core problem. A few of you may have done that. A few of you may even have thought of the product or the idea already, right? So my intent here through this workshop is to be able to help you, for those who have not yet zoomed into the problem and the specific problem that you want to address, to be able to do that. And for those who have already thought of a product, my intent here would be to request you to allow the idea to get tested through these various steps, right? So what would happen at the end of the workshop would be that you will add so many more layers of purpose to your idea and to your product. So in design, as an architect, I can say that in design, we often use a term called the design brief. And I think all designers, be it any designer of any product, would always work very deliberately on the design brief. So what I will hope that even if you've got a product in mind, you test it through this process, and that will actually add value and make your design brief a lot richer. So if your product was just doing one thing, by the end of this workshop, you would have added a few more layers to it, and it will become even more specific and even more relevant to this whole context. Yeah. So Simone, coming back to your slide, I can see that there is some sort of a product in your mind already. Now, what would be really nice in this case would be the ability to question a few things so that the product becomes finer and richer. So if I were to look at this, you are implying that the garbage or the waste disposal system is where you would want to intervene. So let's say the waste management system is where you would want to intervene. And mind you, garbage truck is a small component within the waste management system. Are you understanding, Simon?
Yes.
Yeah. So I quite understand the fact that you're talking about these garbage dumps, and you're talking about recycling wastes and segregating waste. I think you about a truck, you are actually talking much larger. You're talking about a system of segregation. You're talking about a system of recycling. You're talking about a system of disposing, which, mind you, is very, very sensible a scale to think of. And then so your objectives are at a very systems level. And this, if you can identify these keywords and these key systems that you're looking at, then you can say that this truck that you may be designing, or this product, or this app that you're going to design, is going to fall within that system. So whatever the system aspires to do, you may see that there may be different ways that you may actually want to let's say implement that system or implement that idea, and garbage truck may be one of them. So right now, identify that system, identify the key act that you would want to start thinking of the need as a verb. You understand? Don't look at it as a noun. So right now, the garbage truck is a noun. But if I were you, and I would strongly recommend, you're not me, so that's so that's not what you're supposed to do. But if I can strongly recommend that I would want you to look at the problem and the need as a verb and not as a noun, to segregate, to reuse and recycle, right? To dispose effectively and environmentally in a responsible manner. So that is how I think your problem will get defined in a very meaningful and a globally relevant manner. And then we will arrive at the ideation for solutions, of which the truck can be a part of. Yeah?
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks, Simon. We can see, and that applies to everybody in this group, because I'm assuming all of you are working with a similar SDG, and hence you are a group.
Climate change, yeah. That's 2 out of.
And let's see the third group. Interesting. Do you want to speak a little about it, Ishita?
I think, yeah. Ishita, Avi, Anjali. Yeah. Ishita?
Yes. Hello. Am I audible? So the SDG that we have chosen is gender equality, and so far we have identified these problems, and like one of the major problems that we feel is, like, because we all are school students, so we have seen a lot of gender bias in school. So that is something which is actually hurting us all. So that is something which we actually are working on, and we are thinking of extending our project to offices and organizations. And then since we are in an hackathon, so we were looking at the gender bias, like the gender bias which is there in artificial intelligence. So that's in the form of jobs and also in the form of the biased algorithms. And then one of the key aspects of gender bias is that generally people don't realize that they are actually practicing gender bias, and that they are gender biased, because in the 21st century everyone feels that they are quite feminist, but that's far from reality. So basically we want to bring in this self-realization of people. Secondly, we also feel that our textbooks are quite male dominated, and that's something which should change. And safety and security of women is something which is really important, and especially India is very unsafe for them. Thank you.
That's very interesting, Ishita, and I'm really in awe right now of the way you guys have thought this off, and you are intending to take this forward. And I agree with everything that you've said. And my strong suggestion to you at this stage would be that while you've listed down these 5 areas that you would want to work um, within this larger goal, it's also a very good idea that to be able to find a solution, it's a good idea that you pick up, say, one, and you start understanding, why does this happen? Why is this a low representation of women in schools, offices, and organizations? And which part of the world are you referring to? Is this a generic problem? Is it a problem which is across the globe? Or are you referring to a specific context? Okay, or are you referring to a specific set of offices and organizations? Because the more specific you will get, the more easy it will become for you to identify the user, to say that the user here are the women. It's true, but it's very large, right? So for a product to become, like we talked a while ago, to be able to identify the extreme user, that's actually the next segment. But in your case, I'm mentioning it here because I think there is a need to start becoming more specific about the problem. And that can only happen if you can probe a little more, as in, like I said, why is the representation of women low in certain schools, offices, and organizations? Why is there a gender bias in AI? And what do you mean when you say that there is a gender bias? So a lot clearer articulation of each of these realms that you're wanting to engage with, right? So why is there a misconception why is there a misconception in people? Is there something wrong is there something in the definition of feminism which requires clarity? Is it why is there a misconception? All right, then, so if you're understanding what I'm saying, the idea is to become a lot more specific and to ask questions on each of these 5 pointers that you've presented before us right now. And that will lead you gradually to a so right now it's very divergent, and that's the beauty of design thinking anyway. So what you're doing is fantastic. You are at a very divergent stage where there are a lot of ideas within that goal in your head. And what you may want to do is now slowly converge, because you are wanting to at some point be able to focus and define the problem very clearly for yourself to be able to design the product. So from this divergent frame of mind that you're in, you have to slowly start converging to very specific problems within these 5 areas that you're choosing to work with. Yeah, so all the best for that. And mind you, it's quite a task. And at your age, you guys are presenting these, which is, like I said, I'm totally impressed and in awe. So I think it's a good idea. Is there any other group, Shikha? Do we have one more group? Or 3 groups is what I understand.
These are the 3 groups we have, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not a bad idea if we give them another couple of minutes to just absorb what has been told to them, and to become, to just list down a few things that helps them move towards specificity. Yeah, so I think all of you could take another 2 minutes to think of the discussion that we've had right now, and then we can continue to the next step. So let's try becoming a little more specific about what is it. Start asking questions on what you've presented on the screen right now. I can see Anaya is very happy.
Miss Anaya just got a dog like 2 weeks ago. She got a dog. Probably why she's very happy.
So we'll give you guys 2 minutes more and then we move on, because I'm mindful of time, right? another 30 seconds, and then we move to the next task. Now, in this next task, what I want you to do is...
Anushka has a question. Should I just ask? Is it okay if I come up with more details on a separate document? Yeah, you can just add. Oh, sorry.
Yes.
I thought I questioned you.
Yeah, so like I said, this is very demonstrative. You may want to carry this workshop with you through the day and do this in more detail, with more time given to yourself, maybe by the end of the day after you're done with all the sessions. So there is no hurry. Like I said, these tasks are going to require a lot more of your engagement, a lot more of your time. So please feel free to continue this exercise later also. So in your next task, what I want you to do on the same slide, or maybe in the next slide, whichever you're comfortable with, to be able to identify that if this is the problem that you're going to address, who is the user for whom you will be solving this problem? Or who is the user who will be using this product? Now here also, the more specific you are, the easier it will be for you to design the product, right? So in the case of the OXO grip peelers, we were talking about an extreme user, a very specific extreme user. It was somebody with an arthritis condition, a certain age and a certain gender, and it was designed for that one person. But like we saw that even though the extreme user may be a very small percentage, because of the amplified needs of the extreme user, we actually end up getting a very interesting insight into the problem, and hence we design very differently and uniquely and creatively. So let's quickly jot down in the next 2 minutes, who is the extreme user for your product? And your time starts now. Specific about the age, the cultural context, the place. You can be specific about the weight, the height, the gender, the language the person speaks. You can be very specific. You can create like a character sketch in words of your user if you want. You can be that specific also.
Can you please repeat it once more? The kids are just a bit unsure from team 1 as to what they have to do.
So now that you know that that's the area and the problem is related to a particular goal and you're trying to zoom into the problem, can you now, whatever product you will design, whom are you going to be designing it for? Who are you going to be solving this problem for? Who faces this problem? Okay. Do you want to define the user? What is the age group? Where is this user, which part of the world in? So for instance, if I was doing this workshop for a corporate setup, this workshop would be very different, right? I would be using very different tools. I'd be using very different vocabulary. I'd be giving a very different time frame for the tasks. But I know that you guys are 7 to say 17 years, you're a very different age group. So for me, it was very important to know a little bit more about you guys before I could structure this workshop. So, let's say this workshop is a product. Okay, so for this product to be useful to you, it's very important for you to become very specific and zoom in onto a user group. Is that clearer, team A? Team 1? So if you were to design, say, a product, uh, if you're designing a product uh, which is to be used by, say, youngsters, but if you end up designing that product, if it is so complex that the person you're designing for doesn't have the skill set or the ability to handle that product, then it's of no use. Am I right? So it's important to know who is your user, because only then will you know what are the skill sets that the user has. So some of you may be designing a product for, say, a 6-year-old. So then know more about that 6-year-old. Some of you may be designing something for an adult who's 30 to 40-year-old in a particular department or in a particular field of work. What are the skill sets then? Say some of you may be designing something for a marine engineer who may be, say, 30 to 50 years of age, possesses a certain skill set in a particular part of the world and is familiar with, say, XYZ languages. So that's the kind of a character sketch and specific user group I want you to identify right now.
Team 1, is it clear? Do you all need any more assistance? Ahana, Aisha, Ariana. Okay, great.
So give you one more minute and then we'll move on. All right. Now the next task with this user that I want you to do is, why do you think, in the next 2 minutes, you have to write, why do you think this user group is experiencing the problem that you are wanting to address? So say some of you are talking about a waste management system, right? And you've identified a set of users in a particular part of the world or wherever you may have identified the user. So why do you think the user is facing that problem? Why is that the dumps are being created, and who's creating it, and who's facing the problem after that? And why? Is it because there is no adequate segregation system in place? Is it because the segregation system in place is there in place, but the people are not equipped to, but the people are not trained enough to, to handle the segregated waste? So let's start thinking. So, ideally, I can understand it's a bit challenging for you because, ideally, we are in a very different landscape right now, which is the virtual landscape. Ideally, when you're doing design thinking, when you're trying to understand the user, to do it for 2 minutes is like the most unfair thing to do, right? And because ideally you should be using one-on-one interactions with your users. You should be able to go and talk to them. You should be able to go and interview them. You should be requesting them to click photographs of themselves while dealing with the problem that you are wanting to solve. And when you see those photographs, you get to see how the user is emoting also, because whether that user is doing this, is going through that challenge or that task happily, in stress, is there excitement? So, all that needs to be known to you. So that's why I'm saying this is demonstrative. And I'll really appreciate, and I would really recommend that you actually do this outside the workshop also, and go and find the user, talk to the user for whom you're going to develop this product, understand the problem, and start empathizing with that user. Start really probably spend in COVID times, you can't go and spend time with the user, but you can have a conversation through a virtual medium. You can request them to take photographs or videos of themselves doing what they're doing, and where they're facing the challenge that you are wanting. Observe those photographs and videos, prepare a questionnaire, share it with them. The questionnaire can be prepared in a manner that the answers should be able to help you understand the user. Once you've done that, you will start trying to question why. Why is this person having so much problem in this scenario? And you'll realize, like in the case of my pen and my grip, the problem was not just the pen and the lack of friction. The problem was that I can't let go of that pen also, because I have an emotional connect with it also. So that why is very important. And if you can understand your user well, then you will be able to answer this why very well. So I'm not going to ask you to share your feedback right now, because that wouldn't be fair. You've just identified your user. You need to engage and converse with your user. Have some conversations on the phone, through Zoom, request for photographs, talk to them and understand them a little better before you design your product, or with whom you will test your product. And please feel free to mail to me and ask me anything, any stage or any step. If you feel that you're stuck, we can connect, we can request Shikha to arrange a parallel session for us to be able to answer queries once you've become clearer on the user and once you've managed to talk to a few of them virtually. Yeah?
Yes, definitely.
Because I'll again reiterate that this is demonstrative. So what I would suggest you should do is, once you've got the user and once you've got fair understanding of the user and the problem that you're wanting to address, the next step is to be able to get a very interesting insight or a conflict which may create an opportunity for some creative thinking. So one of the best and the easiest ways I've always felt to get a deep insight is to ask maximum of 5 questions and a minimum of 3 questions. So for instance, I'll go back to that same analogy that I'd drawn with me and the pen. So the question was, the problem was I'm having a lot of pain in my fingers. My first question, why am I having a pain in my fingers? Because I wrote for 3 hours yesterday. Question 2, why should writing give me a pain in my fingers? So the answer is, because I was using a metallic fountain pen which was slippery in nature. Question 3, then why am I not using a pen with a better grip? And the answer to that question is, because this pen holds a huge emotional value for me, because it was gifted to me by my mother on a very special occasion. So on the third probing, or the third why, I got my conflict. Some of you may get your conflict or your surprise element at question 3. Some of you may get it at question 4, and some of you may get it at question 5. And we stop there. Okay? And once I understood that that is the surprise element, that is the conflict, all right, now I'm ready to start finding solutions to that problem. And now for the next And now for the next step, which is actually my favorite step. According to the very famous author, so I understand that some of you may not be very clear on who your user is, right? Am I correct? It's all right. It may take time. It may not come in instantaneously, because there is a possibility that you may have been designing a product. Now it's okay if you were to start thinking, who was I thinking of will be using? Who was I visualizing? Was it an adult? Was it somebody who was technically equipped? Was it somebody is somebody doing it in an office space? Is somebody doing it from a lab? Is somebody doing it from their home? Is somebody using this product from a playfield in the open? So you have to sit down and try visualizing also. That once I've identified the product, where am I seeing this product getting used? In your case, because you may have a product in hand. But the ideal scenario is that if you've got a problem, you have to be able to understand who is facing that problem and who needs to get defined clearer. Where are they? How do they look like? What are their skill sets? What are their limitations? So for instance, I may want to introduce fantastic virtual online learning programs for a particular school, let's say. But if I don't understand that the school does not have adequate devices and gadgets, and if I don't understand that the teachers may not be very familiar with the softwares or the skill set required to teach those soft skills, softwares, and those so then there is no point in me sharing product with that particular school. It's only once I've understood that there is just this much skill set available and just these many gadgets available, does it make sense that I designed my product for people with this skill set, with these restraints and these limitations of gadgets. So ideally, you should always identify the problem and identify who is facing the problem before you design that product. Yeah. So you may want to give this some time, and that's why I'm suggesting that we do probably a parallel session at a later time for any discussion that you may want to have on who your user is and how you can come up with very appropriate and relevant products to suit this user in the context of the problem that you've identified. Does that help, teams? Yeah. Okay. Now, once you've identified the problem, once you've identified the user, become more specific about it. And once you've attempted to ask your 5 whys, your questions, and probed deeper into the need of the user and got a very interesting insight, you've revealed that surprise element or you've revealed that conflict, what you then need to understand is you need to be able to put all this together and finally come up with a problem statement. Now, a problem statement to me is a very, has many negative connotations. So I'd rather call it defining the challenge, or I'd rather call it the narrative, or I'd rather even call it the story. So in the words of the famous author, Terry Pratchett, again, pardon me if there is pronunciation errors here. People think that stories are shaped by people. In fact, it's the other way around. And in the context of design thinking workshop, we might paraphrase it slightly here and say that it's true that products are shaped by the stories that people tell about them. And it's very interesting that the marketing world too has taken on and latched on to this whole concept of selling products through stories. And design thinking has started playing a very important role in the marketing world, because if you can create that emotional connect between the product and the people who are going to use it, you've actually done what you needed to do very effectively. You've made the product very acceptable by the user. So design thinking in that sense finds application in practically every field around us right now. And storytelling is another very interesting aspect of this whole process. And if you can start narrating your design challenge through the story, a short story that you may write, which will elaborate on what the problem is, who is facing that problem, and why is that person facing that problem, you will actually see, you will have articulated a very, very interesting design challenge for yourself. Do you guys want to try doing this little bit of storytelling in the next 5 minutes? So I know you're not very clear. Some of you are not very clear on your user right now, but that's fine. Let's try using this storytelling or this narrative task as maybe a chance to get some clarity on the user and the surprise element or the deeper insight into the user's need. Let's give it a shot. So let's give 5 minutes to this task called the narrative. So write a paragraph, a short story, one paragraph of not more than 50 words, right? Which tells us, write like authors if you want, write interestingly about what your problem is that you're wanting to address, who are you addressing it for, and why do you think that person is going through that problem? Remember what I said a while ago. You're all very fearless. It's all right. You may not be able to weave everything together into this story. That's fine. You may just manage to write a story about 2 of these. That's fine. But don't fear not being able to achieve something. It's all right. I would want you to attempt it. I would just want you to try writing this little story.
Ria has a question. Yes, you can unmute Ria.
For the user, I'm not too sure whether a user can be an entire community, or does it just have to be like one in 5 people?
That's a very good question, Ria. And I think the user can also be looked at as a very relative term, depending on the scale of impact of your intervention. So if you're intervening at a very large scale, then a community may also be addressed as a user, right? But within the community also, you can identify the extreme user and design it for a smaller percentage within the community, because like we discussed earlier, because their needs are amplified, so you will understand the needs much more clearly, and then it definitely gets accepted by the bulk users. That's the rest of the community also. So that clearly depends on the scale of the problem that you are addressing. But yes, I would always encourage you to go and look for that extreme user within your user group.
Do you mind if I ask a question?
Yes, please.
I didn't exactly understand how we're supposed to come up with the story. Do you mind explaining again?
I can try explaining this again. So a while ago, we had a brief discussion on what your problem is. Am I right? And then I requested you all to start identifying your user group, to start answering the question who, right? And then I've asked, and then I suggested that once you've identified your user group, who the person or the persons you are addressing through this product of yours, or who are facing this problem, I requested you all to then go through the exercise. I suggested that you go through the 5 whys. You ask, why is that person or are those persons facing that challenge? Why is this person experiencing these difficulties? And ask those 5 questions and get a deep insight. Now you've got the what, you've got the problem, you've got the user, and you've got the insight. Now, the idea would be that you have all these 3 ingredients and you write a small little, it could be a small little story-like paragraph, which has all these three components and which gives the reader a clear picture of, and which helps the reader understand the challenge. But in case you do not have much clarity right now on the user, even then this narrative becomes very interesting and the storytelling becomes very interesting, because while writing the story, because you all have a very clear idea about the problem that you want to solve from what I saw, while writing the story, you may actually start visualizing. There may be a screenplay that's happening in your head of who is facing this problem. They may be like one of you said, it may be a community, it may be a few people, it may be a person. Yeah. So that's what I wanted to do. Try writing a short story of, let's increase the word limit, if not 50, maybe 100 words. I'm fine with that.
Okay. Thank you.
But not less than 30 words.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's give you a generous 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes. 5 minutes, I think, is good since we're running out in time.
Anybody needs me to add a new slide for them? Or does everyone know how to add a new slide? Everyone and Aisha got logged off because of connectivity issues, so they're a bit confused about the last bit.
Okay, I think I'll wait for them to log in and then I'll have a word with them.
Log back in.
Here.
Okay. Are you both here? Do you both enjoy reading stories?
I only got logged out for a second, not now, but when I got logged out, I lost the slides.
I'll just send it to you again.
I didn't miss anything when I got logged out.
Super, super. Now, you guys all, I'm sure, love reading stories. You've got your parents who've read stories to you. You've had your friends. You've read stories with your friends, with your teachers. You've read stories yourself. So you have to bring out that young author in you and write an interesting story about these three components. It's okay if one is missing. It can always come in later. Let's see. You know how authors work? They make multiple drafts of their stories. So they have a draft 1, they have a draft 2. So let this be your first draft. And the first draft need not always, it never is the final draft. see some very interesting responses coming in. And what I'm really liking it is the fact that you guys are using this as a reflection time on whatever ideas you've been working on, and you're identifying the gaps, and you're wanting to fill in those gaps at a later date. And that's fantastic, and I think that's what this workshop intends to do. Please continue with the flow. Shikha, can we give them another 5 minutes? I can read some really interesting stories that are coming out. And I don't want to break the flow of their...
No, absolutely. We'll give them another 5 minutes.
Great, thank you. So teams, coming back to the session, I've been reading a lot of narratives and stories that you guys are writing, and I have to admit that they're very interesting, and they're very, very informative, and they're very reflective of your understanding of your own identified problem. So I would suggest that whenever you get time, highlight the keywords in those stories. You've identified certain characteristics of your user. You've identified lazy. You've identified selfish. You've identified age. You've identified qualities, soft skills. You've identified, some of you have identified the regions, urbanized, rural. So you've actually got a very interesting set of information which is now beginning to trickle into your problem and your problem statements. And my suggestion would be that take out 10 minutes or 15 minutes sometime in the day whenever you get the window, and just highlight those keywords that have emerged from these narratives that you've written, and they will start helping you understand your problem better, understand what you need to understand from the user whenever you interact with the user, and you will get a lot more clarity on which direction the ideas need to flow. Yeah. So one of the most, so while everybody loves this word called brainstorming, I think it's always a very good idea that before you jump into brainstorming with the group, it's never a bad idea. And it's never a bad idea to do a self-brainstorming of a few minutes before you take your ideas to the group. And why this helps is because when you're brainstorming with yourself, you are not scared to put out on paper what you may even quote unquote call silly, what you may also term as, oh, it's so obvious. But no, what may seem obvious to you may not be very obvious to the others. So it's, you're doing it in a much more uninhibited space. So list down whatever ideas come to your mind based on the definition of the problem. So like it says, that the best way to get a good idea is to get lots of ideas. And self-brainstorming for a few minutes before you jump into your group is always a good idea. And that also helps because you have to understand that right now, like all of you are working in groups. You've all got slides, but each one of you can have a look at each other's slide and have a conversation on it and discuss it. Now, all of you are coming from very diverse places. All of you are very different people with diverse skill sets. And if each one of you can bring in your list, post your self-brainstorming, and then discuss that within a large group, there's so much that you learn from each other. There's so many analogies of personal experiences, of educational experiences, of professional experiences that you bring onto the table post your self-brainstorming. So since we are running out of time, I don't know if we'd be in a position to do this right now, but being a demonstrative workshop, keep in mind that whenever you've got your problem defined, the best way to start brainstorming is to first allow yourself to get into the silent zone. Ideate with yourself for a few minutes and then jump into the room with diverse ideas, diverse set of people, exchange ideas as osmotic as it can be, and come up with a multiple set of ideas. The purpose of design thinking is also not to design a product just because you thought that was the right idea. Need not always be the right idea, right? Because now you've understood your users so much better. You've ideated, you need to ideate keeping that user in the center, the user's needs in the center, the users, the insight that you have about the user now. You should be post your interviews, post your interactions, post your conversations, post the questionnaire and the data that you collect, post the videos and the photo documentation that you will have of your user. You'd be so much more well aware and informed about your user, that your understanding of the problem has completely changed. And hence your ideation is going to be very customized and very specific to the user need. And that is where design thinking becomes very powerful and helps you ideate creatively and in a very unique manner. So with this, I think I'd like to thank all of you for being a wonderful, wonderful, and such a enthusiastic audience with so much conversation, with so much feedback, with so much work that I saw on the Google Slides. It was fantastic. If you want, I can take a few questions, Shikha, before we sign out.
Sure. Guys, do you all have any questions for Tina, Miss? Anything you want to ask her? You guys can unmute and ask. Okay, so I think some of them wanted to keep in touch and, get in touch with you through email in case they need help later. Maybe once they get time.
Definitely.
Yeah, to think and, reflect.
It'll be a pleasure.
Okay, great. Awesome. So thank you so much, Tina. It was such an enlightening session, I'm sure, for the kids as well. And it was truly a pleasure to learn from you today. I have learned a lot too. And yeah, thank you so much. Guys, can we
You're
all...
very kind, Shikha. You're very kind. All I want to say is, kids, you've been fantastic. What we did today was not easy. What we did, the deep dive that we tried and attempted today was is in itself a very challenging experience, and it's a very immersive exercise, and it can be very exhausting also. And you are all young. You're all what, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and you guys, the kind of responses that I'm seeing on the slides, I am leaving this room highly impressed and looking forward to the kind of products that you'll be designing by the end of the accounts. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Do you all want to tell Tina?
Thank you, Miss.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Most welcome.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, ma'am.
Bye. Thank
Miss,
you.
we have to join at 3 o'clock, right?
Yes. So the next, y'all can just stay back for a second. Just give me a minute.